Welcome to Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today, we're looking at some close encounters in our own backyard, so strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. All right. Kyle, how is it going, my man?
It's going good. Another week.
Good week. We've got some great stuff coming up on the show this week. It's just so everybody knows, but we've got some interviews that we're going to be doing this week and posting those on the channel. But today we are talking about our very own Arizona and the UFO sightings that we've seen here and some notable ones. In 2019, can you believe this, Kyle? In 2019, Arizonans recorded over 200 UFO sightings. Our state ranks number 7 in the U.S. in UFO sightings with a total of 3,188 documented sightings. There's a few other places, Florida and California, that have logged more sightings, but I don't really hear about any that are as notable as the Phoenix Lights, which we're going to talk about today. We're also going to talk about Del Rio Springs, Del Rio Springs Creek. But more important than the volume of sightings is the personal nature of each of these sightings. Have you ever seen any UFOs yourself, Kyle?
Yes. I think everybody has seen something that they can't identify in the sky. I don't think I've ever truly seen something that I'm like, that is a spaceship or that is something from a different world. But maybe I have and not, though, as well.
You have?
Or maybe I have and I didn't know.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know.
There's only one time that I can say I've seen something that I couldn't explain. It's barely worth talking about, but I do recall pretty vividly. It was a summer night. I was driving to my girlfriend's house in Mesa, and I saw an object. It was pretty high in the air, and it was like glowing green. And it was just like zipping around real quick, changed course really rapidly, like 2 or 3 times. It would do this thing where it would shoot and then hover for a second and then change course and then go back. And then it just disappeared. The whole thing was maybe like 2 seconds. And there's not really any way I could try and verify what I had seen. I'm pretty sure I was the only person who saw it. Kind of reminded me of a firefly, but we don't really have those in Arizona. Mm-hmm. It was way too high in the air to have been a bug. I did tell my girlfriend about it, and she looked at me like I was crazy. So I just never talked about it. And then 2020 happened, and the Pentagon dropped all these videos of UFOs, right? And I was like, maybe I wasn't crazy. What did you think when the Pentagon started dropping all those videos?
I mean, I'm a firm believer that we're not alone in this universe. There's no way. So something has to go, hey, that little blue light right there, what's that got to be? That's got to be something, And so when they kind of said it, I think it was very strategic when they sent it and they told us. It was very strategic timing. We're already panicking about X, Y, and Z. Hey, let's let everybody know this right here. But I was like, things have to. There has to be people that aliens, other lives. It has to be. Then they have to be coming and checking out, trying to find are these people worth checking out? Like, I wonder if they have like a requirement. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be something like that they follow.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm still waiting. The military has promised us a comprehensive report ever since they dropped those videos, and it's supposed to drop sometime this year, but I still haven't seen it. Uh, I know that there's news that it's going to be coming soon, but I feel like there is so much more out there that they know that they're not telling us, and we need those answers. I mean, I'm seeing mainstream news outlets talking about this stuff like they have never talked about it before. And so it brings up all of these old cases from way back when that that have been kind of swept under the rug
What you mean, stuff
or
like
try to
Roswell
justify it
and
as a what's that?
like stuff like Roswell and everything.
Yeah, Roswell. But the one I know that you're keen to talk about is the Phoenix Lights.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, did you see them personally?
No, I did, and I lived along I-17. Like I've talked about in our other episode. So, like
Yeah, I
that was
remember.
that was kind of close to the path because it kind of So
Yeah,
no, I something I saw like the next day on the news. And, crap.
yeah. I think I was 14 when the Phoenix Lights happened, and I remember seeing it on the news and then going outside and climbing up on my roof to see them, and you could see them, and it was creepy, man. I was like, oh my gosh, what is that for real? What is that? And they just kind of hovered there for a long time, and then they eventually dipped down behind the mountain, and they were gone. And then there was this quest to find out what it was, and I've got my own theories, but I'm anxious to hear what you know about the Phoenix Lights, and maybe you can shed some light on it,
You
so to
know,
speak.
oh yeah, I can tell. I'm going to totally try to shed as much light as I can on this. And every time they talk, one last point before I get into it is I'm going to reference Armageddon. It's the why maybe we don't capture as many UFO sightings, like because that's what I always wondered. These things have to come in. There has to be some kind of radar that picks it up. But it reminds me of that Armageddon when they finally discover that asteroid's coming,
Yeah.
and the president goes, "Why didn't we see it before?" And they go, "Sir, funding is only $1 million. That's 3% of the sky. And excuse me, sir, but it's a big ass sky." And I think that's why maybe we don't have, maybe there's not as much recorded as we think, or that's why it's only these occurrences where it's in fighter jets and it's in that seems to be what they've kind of showed us. It's like from the perspective of pilots.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm do you think like once it comes out, like astronauts are going to come out and be like, yeah, the last time we were at the International Space Station, we've seen this.
Yeah, there has to be a different perspective for them, right? I know one of the things that looks very different from space is the northern lights, the aurora borealis, because you can see all of it, and what that is solar radiation or solar particles hitting our magnetosphere, and then they excite the atmosphere, causing these rays of lights to kind of bounce off of it. But it looks very different from above than it does.
I bet you
from
it looks
the surface.
incredible.
Yeah, and they show it from the space station, and it looks cool. It's a very different show from up there because it looks so much smaller. But if there's any kind of visible phenomenon happening from that you could see from space that's lighting up the atmosphere, yeah, you should be able to see it, unless it's really small, unless it's really insignificant. But I don't know if the Phoenix Lights fall in that category because it was kind of a large object, right?
Yes, it's a huge V. So I guess we'll get started on the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us what happened.
So it's been like 24 years now, but we're coming upon it. I mean, March 13th, 1997
Yeah.
is the anniversary. March 13th is when it happened. And it's still regarded as probably one of the most famous reported UFO sightings probably in the world. It's something that everybody knows.
Yeah, there were thousands of people who saw it. I mean, it was on the news here. And I saw it from my roof, which was probably 20 miles from where it was. But yeah.
So it looks like here it says March 13th, 1997, around 7:55 Mountain Time. So that was the first reported of the unidentified lights in the sky. And that was from a man that reported a V-shaped flying object above Henderson, Nevada. He reported
Yeah.
it being about the size of a Boeing 747.
Which is a big
He said,
plane. That's a big plane.
which is they're really big planes.
Yeah.
And he said he reported like it's having like a rushing wind, had 6 lights on its leading edge, and it said it was traveling northwest to southwest.
Okay, so it was,
So it's coming.
yeah, it's coming down. But Henderson, Nevada is like by Kingman. Oh no, that's by Las Vegas. It's up by Las
Yeah.
Vegas, right? That's just
Yeah.
across the strip from Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah, because you get to Kingman and then you go this way. You go this way to go to Vegas and this way to go to Laughlin.
Right.
That's your deciding factor of where you're going to go.
But Henderson's just like a suburb of Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about 20 minutes later, Mountain Standard Time, a former police officer from Paulden, Arizona, claims that he's seen the lights as he was driving north. He allegedly saw a cluster of reddish and orange lights in the sky, consisting of 4 lights together and a 5th light tailing them. Each of the individual lights in the formation appeared to consist of 2 separate points of orange light. And he claims that by the time he got home and he got on his binoculars, he watched the lights until they disappeared south over the horizon.
Wow. How long did it take?
By 8:17, there was already reports in Prescott.
Wow. It's
So
huge.
it's huge and it's traveling. So by 8:17, callers began reporting seeing the object in the sky over Prescott Valley, which is about an hour's drive outside of Phoenix.
Yeah, maybe a little more than that.
A little bit more than that. So, and then there was John Crazier was a from Prescott Valley States. He was standing outside with his wife and sons when he noticed a cluster of lights to the northwest. So he looked at the object for about 2 to 3 minutes through binoculars as it passed directly over them. The lights formed a triangular pattern. He says they were red, and like the other report was saying more orange.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounded like it was reddish orange, so maybe
Yeah.
it's just a slight difference, or maybe they're just describing it differently. But it sounds like they're on the same page.
Yeah. People's memories aren't always the best.
Right.
And it says he appeared. He said, like I said, they appeared to be red, except the light at the nose of the object, which he said was white.
Okay.
We saw the banks. Then they said they saw it bank to the right, and then disappear into the night sky, southeast of Prescott.
Yeah. So in this first run up, it sounds like all these lights are connected to an object, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's separate object. It's by with these reports, it's like it's one built-in looking V.
The reason I bring that up is because later on we're going to talk about the quote unquote official explanation for what the lights were, and white doesn't add up, you know. So it hit Prescott. What time did it get to Phoenix?
8:30 to 8:45 is when the report started happening. And this is where once it got to the valley, this is where the reports came in that it was hovering, like you were saying. You saw it hovering.
Yeah, but the lights that I saw were not red. They were like white. And that's why I think there's two different things going on. There's the one that happened earlier in the night, and before the news could get a hold of it, that object had already gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the second object, which was these white lights that we'll talk about in a little bit. But the lights that I remember were white, yellowish. They weren't
And
red or orange.
the lights from the videos that we'd seen on the news, I remember them being white.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
That's why I think there's two different things happening. And that's why I want to get into the details and the nitty gritty here and see if we can pin down what actually was going on.
So it looks like upon the first sighting, Phoenix area witnesses described the shape of lights as a 60-degree carpenter square, which, okay.
Yeah.
5 lights set into it, with 1 at the front and 2 at each side.
Yeah.
Witnesses claim the lights had been traveling so slowly that they appeared to be hovering and silent. The object didn't seem to pass, went through a V opening in the peak. How cool would that have been to see, towards Squaw Peak and towards the direction of the Sky Harbor Airport? Like, how cool would that have been actually to see that, like, go through, like, you know what I mean, like through of the mountain.
Right.
Like, I know it didn't travel through the mountain. That's not what I'm saying, but like just the awesomeness of seeing some crazy light formation, like with the skyline of mountains.
Yeah, dude, it'd be insane. Oh man.
And it
So
says,
it keeps moving south. At what point does it disappear? Because I know they saw it as far south as Tucson, right?
yeah. So it says, so like I said, at 8:30, 8:45 Mountain Standard Time, what was reported is witnesses claim that they kind of hung out for a couple hours
Over Phoenix.
Yeah.
Okay. At what point do the white lights appear?
See, I think that's what stopped and hovered were the white lights.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I think the red lights kind of floated away, like you said, in that V formation. They kind of disappeared behind the mountain, and then the white lights appear at like 10 p.m. over South Mountain or Estrella Mountain, and I remember the white lights sticking around for a long time, and then they kind of slowly dipped down behind the mountain, and then they were gone.
So you think there were 2 different objects?
Yeah, I think there's 2 different things.
Like one came and was up further north, and then there was another one that was hovering, that was in the valley.
Well, okay, so do you have the official explanations? Like, did you get the military's explanation for what it was?
So it says that where's the explanations? So it was let me see if I can find it now. So I think the explanations were actually, it was a training exercise with flares.
Yeah. Yeah, they said they were shooting flares over the mountain. And that's fine. That's fine for the second set of lights because they behaved a lot like flares would, which is they shoot up in the air, they pop, and then they burn there. But they said that the flares are usually come down.
Yes.
Pretty quickly.
And they don't stay, they don't stay
in formation.
Perfect, because they're burning and they're falling differently.
And they said that, well, we had been doing experiments with flares and weather balloons. And I'm like, okay, that's fine again for the second set of lights because you can have the flare attached to the balloon, it pops and it stays there, and then it eventually drifts down when the weather balloon gets cold and then runs out of air. Okay, but what about the first set of lights, the red and the orange lights with the V formation that was traveling over the state of Arizona. It went the entire length of the state of Arizona, north to south, in the space of about an hour, right?
Yeah.
And didn't make any noise. Rushing wind. That's not much noise, right? It's not a jet engine.
No.
You'd be able to hear a jet engine pretty well. And even though it was traveling pretty quickly, to fly over the whole state of Arizona in an hour and just kind of hold position over Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
See, I feel like the flares were the military trying to, make us look over here. This is what it was.
Yeah, I do too. So here's one that I've got a little bit of information for. It says a UFO advocate, Jim Delsada, I'm terrible with names, everybody, claimed to have performed spectral analysis of photographs and video imagery that proved the lights could not have been produced by a man-made source.
Yeah.
He claimed to have used software called Image Pro Plus to determine the amount of red, green, and blue in the various photographic and video images and construct histograms of the data, which were also compared to the several known photos to be of flares. So, and then it says, well, several sources pointed out that, however, it'd be possible to determine spectral signatures of a light source barely based solely on photographic or video imagery, that the spectral signature of a light source by shifting blue in the visual spectrum, and experts in spectrum have dismissed his claims altogether, saying it's just totally invalid.
Yeah, because he's talking about the second set of lights. And his whole methodology was looking at photos or analyzing photos and not the actual lights that were produced that night. Like, he's not an eyewitness. He wasn't pointing his spectrograph at the lights.
He was reconstructing his own lights.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't buy his explanation for the second set of lights. He didn't see the first set of lights. You know who did see it was Fife Symington. And Fife Symington had something to say where he said it's clearly an object. Do you have his quote?
I think I have here. It says, Fife Symington held a press conference stating that I think this is later, though, they had found who was responsible. I don't think I have his original one, no. So, Symington said that he had witnessed one of the crafts of unknown origin during the 1997 event, although he did not go public with the info. He just said, I'm a pilot, and I know just about every machine that flies. It was bigger than anything that I had ever seen. It remains a great mystery. Other people saw it, responsible people. I don't know why people would ridicule it. And then Symington also noted that he requested information from the commander of Luke Air Force Base.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that he never got an answer on the first set of lights. And that's what he saw, was the big object that was flying overhead. He wasn't talking about the flares. He wasn't talking about the white lights. He was talking about the red ones. And they were attached to something huge and angular. And that's the part that we still don't have the answers on.
As a pilot and former Air Force officer, I could definitely say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object I had ever seen. And it was certainly not high-altitude flares, because flares don't fly in formation.
Yeah. There you go. Like, that's it. All right. So what's interesting to me about this particular event is that it actually, while it is probably the most widespread, it's not the first time that Arizonans have seen things like that in the sky. Prescott is considered, I don't know if you know this, but Prescott is considered the Roswell of Arizona. And
I always thought it was Sedona.
yeah, Sedona's like they call it
Like
the
the
vortex, right?
vortex,
The
yeah.
spiritual vortex or the energy vortex. I don't know what that means or where the vortex is spinning to, but in 1953, there were a rash of UFO sightings in Prescott. And there were so many that the newspaper had to print them all. And there was one involving a guy named George Williamson, a 26-year-old Prescott resident with a fine educational background. And they're trying to give the credibility, right, to all of these witnesses. But he says, of February 3rd, he and his wife saw 3 flying saucers when they were walking home. And he said that as recently as 2 nights ago, he made contact with the occupants of the spaceship. And so it was like, okay, that's weird. But he swore on an affidavit that that's what he saw. And then later on, there were on May 21st of that year, the newspaper printed what was called the Del Rio Springs Creek sighting. And it says 3 reliable Prescott residents, one of whom previously had scoffed at the stories of flying saucers and spaceships, were not a bit reluctant to tell of their witnessing the acrobatics of a herd like a flock, of these air mysteries. The 3 people were Bill Beers, who was the president of the Prescott Sportsman Club, and who also happened to be a 20-year veteran pilot himself. And then he says that he used to just disregard these types of reports of flying saucers. And he thought that, people were just seeing balloons or birds or planes or something. But what he said he saw could not have been any of those things. He said around 10 a.m., he was looking at trout, the trout that were stocked at the Del Rio Springs Creek. And then he looks up and he saw 8 flying saucers appearing simultaneously. He said 2 stationary objects swooped around in formation, then broke formation, peeled off, and shot directly up and down in a manner that could not have been duplicated by an airplane. When the 8 crafts moved, they varied from very slow to speeds faster than a jet plane. And after performing their aerial maneuvers for about an hour, all 8 of them just sped off together towards Prescott.
Dang. How cool would that have been to see?
Dude, it's incredible. And
I mean, Prescott is such a nice place. If I was an alien, I wouldn't mind. That would be a stopping point for me.
heading up in the mountains. And that's what, like doing research for this particular episode, it makes me think that maybe I did see something all those years ago. It was probably close to 21 years ago, 22 years ago. And the thing that I saw, this little green light zipping around in the air, very much behaved like that particular sighting that they described. Where it's like moving, it's stopping, it's moving up and down, and in all these different directions that you would never see a plane fly in. And then the last Arizona sighting that I think is worth talking about is Fire in the Sky, Travis Walton.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see that movie?
Yes.
What was your takeaway from that movie?
My takeaway is it just to be abducted would be just crazy. I mean, at least they're kind of nice about it. They do it in a way that like it's more of like a foggy memory.
Yeah.
I guess at least if they keep you. I don't know. What is your take on it?
So what's interesting about Travis Walton, he lives in Heber, Arizona, and my sister and her husband lived in Heber, and he's also a member of my church, and or at least he was at one point. And they said that when they would go to church with him, they'd be asking questions about Christian theology, right? About Jesus and about God and all this stuff. And he would raise his hands and he would give an answer, but it would combine this Christian theology with aliens. He would always bring up the aliens. And for most of us, those two things are totally incompatible. Right? You never hear anybody say, yeah, Jesus is our Lord and Savior, and also aliens. Also, aliens are there. And so it was just this kind of weird juxtaposition of science fiction or I don't know how real you feel it is. I feel like it's real. But science, what we would consider to be science fiction and religion kind of being combined in a way that is a little disorienting.
But how would he tie them together? Like, what would?
That part I never witnessed myself, and they didn't really explain it to me very well. But essentially, something along the lines of, in the hierarchy of heaven, you've got God and his angels, aliens, humans, something like that, right? Where they are people created by God who have come to Earth to try and lead us to a better place, or something like that. And I saw Fire in the Sky, and to me, the most terrifying thing about it was that it was based on a true story, or based on his account. And
knowing that there was the possibility that he was actually gone for 5 days, while aliens did whatever they did to him.
Yeah. And then he was recently on Joe Rogan talking about the experience. And the thing that stood out to me was when he woke up, he was on a table, on a slab, and they were standing over him. These alien creatures were standing over him. And he says he freaked out. He got scared. He got up.
I don't blame him.
And he got up and he reached for whatever he could get. And he grabbed this like long glass rod and started swinging it around, and that he may have struck one or two of them. But then he says, after all these years of thinking about this experience that I had, and I'm no longer sure that they held any hostility for me. I think they were trying to just look at me. They weren't trying to hurt me in any way. So that's like the end, but let's start at the beginning. And
more of a research thing than more of a research.
Like a bag and tag, and then let them go, right? Yeah. But the thing, what actually happened to him was he was out logging. He was a logger, and he and his friends were harvesting some of the federal land
in the White Mountains.
Yeah, and they still do that to this day. There's people out there who harvest the wood, and they do that to prevent fires. And they can also sell the lumber and use the lumber for whatever. But the federal government wants those trees taken down so that they aren't fire hazards. Anyway, he and his friends, they said that they saw these kind of golden lights glowing in the sky. And they were kind of moving around, and his friends were like scared of it, but he wanted to check it out and see what it was. And so he got out of his truck and he ran towards the light. And as he's running towards the light,
which is rule number 1 that you don't do. No.
Yeah. Every scary movie has some crazy white guy running towards a hazard, right? Every single one. And then he's always says, "Hey, let's split up." Yes. Let's split up. But he's running towards the light, and then the next thing he knows, he's waking up in their craft. And in the movie, it has him waking up by himself. And there's other people in the craft. in kind of a sleep state, but for some reason he woke up. He was probably meant to be sedated the whole time, but didn't sedate him. And I had a conversation with somebody where they were like, if these aliens are so advanced, why didn't they sedate him better? And I was like, it's funny you bring that up, because my brother cannot be given certain sedatives because he has an adverse reaction to them. Whereas those same sedatives, when they're given to me, they work just fine. And so if they're doing a study mission, they may not be aware that certain sedatives work differently on different individuals in the population. So if our own medical doctors are still struggling to get that right, these aliens can sure as heck be struggling with the same thing.
Yes. Yes. 100%. I could buy that. Like that totally makes sense.
Yeah. If he gets caffeine, he gets sleepy, which is weird, right? That's weird. Like I get caffeine, I get hyper, I get excited. He gets caffeine, he gets sleepy. And it's just a biochemical thing that he's different
like
from.
I can drink a bunch of Red Bulls and then just go straight to sleep.
Yeah, well, that's probably that's probably your tolerance for the substance, right? But
Yeah.
but for me, that doesn't invalidate the whole experience, right? There's still a lot more going on there. So then he wakes up and he's kind of milling around the spaceship, and they catch him, and then they try to subdue him, tie him down, and that's when he has that experience where he wakes up on the slab and he grabs the glass rod and he's swinging at them. And again, they sedate him and subdue him, and they lock him back up. And then the next thing he knows, he's back, but he's naked, right? He's completely naked in the woods. And it's 5 days later, and he's hobbling into town where everybody finds him. And the question that everybody has is, was it real? Did he believe it?
Honestly, if you believe it enough that it's real, it's real to you.
Yeah, well, he took the polygraph, right? That was the thing, is he took a polygraph and he passed the polygraph.
Yeah, because he 100% believes that it really happened.
And yeah, he 100% really believes that it happened. Did it happen the way that he said? And there's a lot of people out there who are skeptics, but I'm not one of them. I'm like, that dude saw something, and he feels a certain way about it, and it changed his life. Like, he now talks about God and aliens in the same breath. That it's all part of the same belief system for him. And that kind of thing really makes you slow down and wonder what's going on in the skies above Arizona.
Yes.
So let's get back to the Phoenix Lights. What do you think happened in the Phoenix Lights?
What I personally think about the Phoenix Lights is, I think it's something like we as the normal people don't know the technology that we actually have. Like,
okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like Area 51 and stuff, we actually don't know what they're. We really don't. Like Apple, for example, they're not right now only working on like the iPhone 14. They're working on at least 2 or 3 iPhones head on top of other technology that they haven't brought to the table. I think it's the same way. I think that, we're a military based power, you know what I mean? So we're trying to always find that edge. And I think it was something that is man-made that we have figured out. We figured out a new technology.
Okay. And
But
what are
on
like
that same, okay, go ahead.
what's the reason why it hasn't been made public?
Well, that's what I was gonna get. That was my second point, is because it's just maybe it hasn't been needed yet. But I guess if you got it, you'd bring it out. That's where I go back and forth. Okay, we've got it. Why aren't we using it? Or we've perfected it and we're using it. We don't know, like we as the normal people don't know that we're using it. Almost like, like stealth bombers. They're quiet.
Yeah.
They're kind of a V-shaped, you know what I mean? They're meant
Yes.
not to get a lot of attention. They're meant to be quiet. They're meant to be fast. They're built. So is this something that is just we have already? Like maybe, then in the 90s we've perfected that technology. Like drones. Look how small we've made drones.
Yeah. Okay, so you're talking about the stealth bomber, the B-2 Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit that was first flown in 1989. It was made public before it was ever flown, and so that's why I'm like I don't buy that the U.S. is keeping something secret, because we are terrible at keeping things secret. Um, they tried to keep it secret for a long time, and then in 1984, there was an employee of Northrop who was arrested for attempting to sell the information regarding the stealth bomber to the Soviet Union, and he was sentenced to life in prison. And then eventually, the bomber itself, the aircraft itself, was displayed for the public as a way to kind of increase military or support for the military. And I don't think that the U.S. military would be keeping its best secrets in its back pocket, um, waiting for a battle or waiting
Waiting
for
for the right time, like
yeah,
like I
yeah,
said, yeah. And that was my second part of that, is that's my conflict. And here's my other conflict with aliens is space is not close together.
yeah,
Everything is very far apart.
for sure.
And I know, and this is probably my simple mind, or as a human, that knowing that technology for for the closest planet that we have to us is Mars.
Yeah,
What does it take for us to get to Mars? 7 years.
takes a long time.
So to have constant, so it's hard for me to wrap around my head of constant alien sightings and or UFO sightings, because how long it takes to get somewhere. Now I believe that maybe they came at a period of time because of the time it takes to travel. So maybe they showed up around the time of when Egyptian was building the pyramids. And they said, okay, this isn't an advanced race yet. Maybe, and they've moved on. Just the amount of time it takes. And it's just because I know we don't have technology to speed up getting light years.
So it sounds like your theory is that they're here with us right now, and they're hanging out with us. Is that what you're saying?
It's closer to what I'm saying. Like they've already come, because the amount of time it takes to I would assume that it takes to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Just because it's space is so far, we do it in light years. How long it takes light to travel somewhere, and light, what does it travel at? The speed of light, which is, I can't remember, but it's pretty fucking fast.
It's like 8 meter, or it takes light from the sun eight and a
Pardon my
half
language.
minutes to get here. 93 million miles on average, 8.5 minutes. So it's fast. But
So that means alien tech. And don't get me wrong, I don't think aliens are keeping pace with us as technology wise.
right.
But even if you do something, it's gotta travel fast. Like that's when I think like when I watch an alien movie, or when we are as humans are traveling in space, I find it more reasonable that we go to sleep and then we wake up when we're at our destination because of the
Okay.
time it takes to travel somewhere. That's
All right.
really to make the trip.
Well, most of the space travel movies, they assume that time passes at a constant rate, which is not accurate because the faster you travel, the slower time moves for you. So if you're approaching the speed of light, time slows down for you. So um, if you're traveling at the speed of light, you it may take so for example, the light created at the sun. Let's assume that that is a, a person who's going to go the speed of light to travel to Earth. So while we're observing that light moving towards the Earth takes 8.5 minutes, to the person traveling in that beam of light, it's instantaneous.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for tuning in, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Yes. Hey, Patrick.
Um, and so if aliens are traveling at the speed of light or close to it, the time for them is not going to pass the same way as it is for us. Right? It may take them 4 years of our time to get from Alpha Centauri to here, but for them, it's going to be, instantaneous.
And like I said before, that's just my head not being able to wrap around being able to go that fast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like since I can't wrap my head around it, I find it hard to like the thought. Like I'm sure eventually it'll be figured out. Like you know what I mean. And eventually they're gonna have to figure the science will catch up to that and figure out how to actually travel that fast.
Yeah, I mean the concern that I have is that traveling at that speed takes tremendous amounts of energy, and there may not be enough energy to make anything travel that fast. But yeah, maybe it is the case that they're already here with us. Maybe it is us from a different time frame.
Can't wait till we talk about that episode. I can't
All
wait till
right.
we do that.
But the thing that I am absolutely convinced of with the Phoenix Lights is that first craft that traveled from Henderson down to Tucson over the course of about half an hour to an hour is different from the white lights or the flares that hung over South Mountain for an hour or 2 hours. I think those are completely different objects.
Yeah.
And what actually happened was that V-shaped object flew over the state, and then the military realized that people were seeing it, and so either they wanted to find out what it was, and so they launched the flares to see if they could find it, or, like you said, it was their own technology, and they were trying to create some kind of smoke screen to keep people from thinking what it actually was, or discovering what it actually was.
But I mean, and back onto that point where I think it might have been our own technology too, is we come up with stuff and we don't always keep it. Okay, it's this is good, but this isn't something that we can use. Like people scrap ideas. Things get maybe it was an idea that was built and scrapped.
Yeah, maybe that's the case, but then it makes you scratch your head as to what about these 1953 cases or the 1975 cases where people are seeing stuff, and golden lights in the sky or flying saucers in the sky. How does that add up? How is it possible all these people across so many decades are seeing the same things? and we're still not any closer to answers. And then in 2020, we're seeing videos of these objects that are zipping around aircraft and aircraft carriers, and we still don't know what they are. And the Pentagon is videotaping them, and we don't even know what it is.
I mean, that's why I'm ready for them to come out and be like, listen, this is it. This is why we have the microwave. This is why, you know what? No, I'm just playing. But like, yep, they're here. This is what they're doing. This is what's going on. But do you think we can handle it?
I think it's time. I think it's absolutely time. We can absolutely handle it. I think we're capitalists at heart, right? All of us want to pay for incredible experiences. Physically speaking, we may not be able to handle the G-forces involved in traveling at supersonic speeds and then changing directions instantly. That would probably kill every single one of us. But it's something that we need to know about, right? A robot would be able to do that. But we personally, if you were traveling in a direction and then suddenly turned, it would probably smash your brain into the side of your skull, and then you'd be dead. But I think a lot of people would pay to know what that is. And if the government is short on military funds or wants to raise taxes, that's a good way to sell it. And whatever the reason is for holding it back, that doesn't seem very capitalist. It doesn't seem very American to me, honestly.
I think they should at least do it so we can get to the moon, so we can build our
moon base,
so that we can get to Mars easier.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, whatever the technology is, there's absolutely no reason why the government would hold it back, especially when they can sell it and make so much money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the other thing that makes me skeptical, that the government really doesn't know what it is. They have as much idea as we do, which is zero. We've seen it, we've recorded it, we've documented it, but we don't know anything about it. We have yet to shoot it down. We're not even close. And until we can capture it and study it, we're never going to know.
You think they would eventually, like, all these years, of aliens and reports, and you think eventually they would just be like, howdy, neighbor? you know what I mean? Like, okay, I think you guys, it's been, X amount of thousands of years that we've been hanging out. We're ready to say hi.
Yeah.
Like, why are they?
Yeah. What are they waiting for?
That's my other thing too. Is like, why are they just keeping toms?
Yeah.
Like, why are they just watching us from what? Why are they? Because that's what I don't get.
The explanation to that, I would say, is if they are just a scientific race trying to understand what we are and what we do, you can analogize what they do with what we do with the so-called uncontacted tribes of the earth. Like there's peoples in the South Pacific who are still living their Aboriginal lives, their Aboriginal culture without any modern technology to this day. They have bows and arrows. They have spears. They don't speak English. They don't speak any modern language that we know of. And occasionally, in fact, in 2020, there was a kid who was killed, a Christian missionary who tried to float over there and teach them about Jesus, and then he was killed by them before he ever reached the shore because they didn't know what to make of him, and they just wanted, whatever comes here, we're going to kill it. And as a world species, we've decided that is something we're going to let be. We're not going to try and contact them. We're going to wait for them to come to us. And so as an intergalactic or interplanetary system, maybe that's the same idea, is that we're going to let the humans of Earth come to us. And when they're ready, when we're ready, when we humans are ready, they'll be there to receive us. But they're not going to make that first move.
Kind of like Star Trek. They can't interfere. They can't let their presence known and interfere.
Yeah.
You ever seen the movie The Abyss?
No, I haven't seen that.
Pretty sure it's a James Cameron movie. So it's the ones where this nuclear submarine crashes. Something happens to it. It's really deep underwater. And so what this diving team does is they're diving down to look for survivors. And what happens is they actually come across this alien race. And the reason that they don't make contact with us is because of our wars and our ways and our governments. And, they're tuned into our news and they've seen what's going on. And they've realized that we're too, I say it is primitive.
Yeah. Savage.
I look at war and all that as primitive and savage. And they're evolved past that so that they don't want to be a part of it.
Right.
And maybe that's why they're still just doing flybys.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying, right? It's that idea of the Star Trek Prime Directive and not wanting to do harm until or make contact until people are ready. I think even if Jesus himself showed up, I think we throw our bombs and missiles at him too. We'd be terrified of that. Yeah. I think even as faithful as we are, we'd be like, no, that's not right. You're not telling us what to do.
I mean, I believe it too. Just the fear.
Yeah.
So maybe that goes back to we're just not ready yet.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're not ready. Whatever it is, I feel like we want an explanation. We want our curiosity satisfied. But whatever the implications are, maybe they're beyond our comprehension at this point.
I think a good closing of this is it's what what's his name said in Men in Black.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, the person is smart, people are dumb.
Yeah,
and I think like COVID and everything has proved still to this day, the person is smart, but people are dumb.
Yeah, I hear that.
So, and I that's how I go. That's kind of my, even after our discussion, everything. That's still my final thought of aliens. Like I still believe that this is my opinion. This is they probably came when we were building, when the world was, Egyptians and stuff were building pyramids and going, they're not ready yet.
Yeah. Well,
and they came back in the 50s.
Came back in the 50s. That was Roswell was in the late 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got all this stuff happening in Arizona and Prescott in 1953. I don't think they've ever left, man. They keep getting caught every so often. They're still buzzing around up there.
I think they're just waiting. Nope, they're not ready yet. They're not ready yet.
Well, if any of our viewers are interested in weighing in on the topic, we invite you to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, of course. Let us know your thoughts. Share your stories. If you've had any personal sightings, tell us about it, man. We would love to talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to read them and talk about them. And
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate all of you, and catch us next time on The Thresholds of Reality.